there was a few weeks or so back, it trended so much, and people were calling you to either end this crisis in Nigeria or retire. And you said you're on it and you end it. It reminds me of IBB days when IBB was the military president of this country, and there was one notorious armed robber called Anini was terrorizing the president at Delta, Edo, then now Edo State, and so on. And there was this story that IBB met the Inspector General of Police then in a public function and asked, "Where is Anini?" And somehow, within that period, that Inspector General should retire. The next one, within 3 days, arrested Anini. So I know within a short period of time, this matter of crisis in Nigeria will end. Thank you for that promise. Let me thank the Minister of Defense and the Defense College for inviting me to appear here today again. You recollect that in 2021 I was here, and when because 30 people were to graduate, that is just about 5 years ago. So when I was approached this time to come, I packed at a very short period, and I said, how can I make it? Because the former War College, Defense College now is a highly respected institution. Even though I'm a former president, if I'm to speak, I must prepare very well because I'm discussing with top military officers and paramilitary officers and civil servants across the continent of Africa. And looking at the time, initially I wanted to decline, but anything about the military, I take it serious. In fact, I whispered to the Commandant General. And my program too was quite tight. But I said, anything about the military, they must have a reason for calling me back. I will not disappoint them. That is why I have to be here. But thank you for that. It is my pleasure to be with you today to share the thoughts on this very, very important and timely topic as appreciated by the Honorable Minister of Defense, harnessing industrial capacity for inclusive growth and regional stability in Africa. And looking at the topic, very critical, just like the previous speakers have said. And it also reminds me about my own belief that for you to create wealth in any society or maybe make people rich, money is a means of exchange. You have to convert what you have in the environment into means of exchange. And that's why as somebody with an environment background, I always say that when you look at people from areas that the environment is quite challenging, you have much of poor people. Because what they can easily convert to means of exchange in money, either naira or dollars, whatever, is limited. Or areas that the environment is devastated, majority of the people remain poor. So this topic, yes, we talk about industrialization, but it's beyond industrialization. It's wealth creation. Because if you cannot convert what you have in the environment to means of exchange, the people will remain poor. But we'll come to that when we talk about natural resources in Africa and all the rest. Of course, one of the greatest natural resources we have is the human brain. And that is critical. So if you look at what happened to Singapore in 1965, when, of course, Singapore was a part of Malaysia up to 65, Singapore did not fight for independence. But the rest of Malaysia drove them away that they were parasites to the whole country and they must leave them. And of course, that pioneer Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew even wept publicly. Because Singapore is a piece of island that have no minerals. And now we have been pushed out from the rest of Malaysia. How do we make sure that our people don't live with highest degree of poverty from nothing? No resources. Of course, they exploited the human brain. They invested so much in education and capacity building. And now Singapore, compared to Malaysia, Singapore is even higher than Malaysia that drove them away. We'll come to that, the issue of critical education, because as I'm going to go through this paper, it's a bit lengthy. There's a lot of figures I'm going to mention, but I'm going to do something that is a bit unconventional. At the end of the day, I have called three of the participants to make comments relating to what I will discuss today and what we should do as African leaders. And actually, I'm addressing African leaders. Though the Minister of Defense is a retired general, talks about, yes, you are not here to create professors. But besides defending us at the war front, we are also creating leaders. And most countries that the presidents were former military leaders and are committed do better than others because of the discipline they acquire through the process. The present people contesting for presidency in Nigeria, I didn't hear any name of a retired military person. I pray the next set, we want some military generals to come back as our presidents. I'm not saying that they may not make mistakes, they're all human beings, but military generals that are disciplined, and when they come to rule and they are committed, they do much better because of the background of the area. So, I know you are not trained professors, but you are also leaders and future leaders. You are already leaders, but you are very senior people in Africa. You are young leaders, and you become great leaders. So, like the topic, harnessing industrial capacity for inclusive growth and regional stability in Africa. I sincerely thank President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the Commandant of the National Defense College, of course, the Honorable Minister that's here with us, for the opportunity to exchange ideas with the graduating participants of Course 34 at this very distinguished audience. I congratulate the graduating participants on your determination, diligence, and dedication throughout, because they say you have been here for 48 weeks. If you have been here for 48 weeks, it's almost a year. A year is 52 weeks, 1 day. So you've been here for one full year for this cause, and I have to congratulate you. In considering our topic this morning, there is a need to explain more of the key concepts in it. By industrial capacity, I mean the ability of a country, region, to transform its natural, human, and technological resources into high-value goods and services through competitive industrial processes. It encompasses productive infrastructure, reliable energy systems, technological capability, skilled human capital, efficient logistic networks, and effective institutions. Inclusive growth, on the other hand, refers to economic growth that generates productive employment, expand opportunities across all segments of society, and reduce poverty and inequality. Together, industrial capacity and inclusive growth reinforces social cohesion, strengthens state institutions, and address the structural drivers of conflicts, thereby laying an enduring foundation for sustainable regional stability. At times, there's a great link between this kind of institution and industrialization. How will industrialization help to reduce crisis, the crisis that the Honorable Minister of Defense mentioned? The 21st century has witnessed significant shifts in the global strategic and economic landscape, driven primarily by rapid technological advancement, industrial transformation, and the reconfiguration of global value chains. History demonstrates that enduring economic prosperity and geopolitical influence depends not only on population size or natural resources endowment, but more importantly, on the capacity of nations and regions to industrialize. This is critical, because if you look at, say, the top 3 continents in Africa, that have the highest resources. Africa is number one, followed by Asia, then Latin or South America. These are the three. But in terms of the ability to create wealth through value addition and industrialization, Asia is number one, followed by Latin America or South America, number two. Africa, the number one in terms of abundance of resources, is number three, among these three top. And that is the purpose of this election. These young leaders that are passing out today, who will continue to lead Africa for the next 30 or more years, how do we change that trajectory? That is the key issue. Forget about the figures. The key thing is that how do we change that trajectory? Can we do something close to what you do in Singapore? And one of the key things is the brain and the educational systems we have. In Africa, we've not really invested in proper education that can make the human brain become productive. Yes, we go to school, we read and write. Sometimes they want you to speak English like the Queen of England. But that is not the issue. How do we create brains that can turn us into an industrialized nation? If you look at the top 100 universities in the world, based on, I think they have 3 groups of people that rate universities. No African university is among the top 100. But as small as Singapore, 2 of their universities are among the top 100 universities. When you come to the top 200 universities, then you have the University of Cape Town. That's the only African university that is there. And if you relate to the universities and technologies in the various nations, you really see the relevance. I used to tell people that India is almost ruling the world in terms of IT. It does not happen by chance. India, even as independence from the British people, set up institutions that prepare India for the future. They set up specialized institutions, not for everybody. I remember the first one they said, a kind of a polytechnic, but like a university. For you to be admitted, you will not get less than 98% in mathematics. So they are the target. They are training their best brains to control and dominate the world. And that's why if you look at most of the IT companies in America, their MDs, their heads are Indians. I don't want to bore you with that. It was not started today. It started before I was born. So we must look at it as Africans. Industrialization has historically been the principal driver of structural transformation, economic diversification, employment generation, and sustained prosperity. Specifically, manufacturing remained. Okay, sorry. Specifically, I was told that when I veered away from the podium, people were not hearing me. Okay. Specifically, manufacturing remains one of the strongest drivers of productivity, growth, innovation, and economic diversification, accounting for nearly 80% of global industrial value added in 2024, based on UNIDO 2025 publication. Countries with diversified industrial economies consistently record higher economic levels, stronger employment outcomes, and greater resilience to external economic shocks than commodity-dependent economies. Of course, we all know, because this is World Bank report in 2024. Consequently, industrial capacity has emerged as a critical determinant of economic competitiveness, technological innovation, productive employment, national resilience, and geopolitical relevance. Beyond its economic significance, industrialization strengthens state legitimacy, reduces socio-economic vulnerabilities, and creates the conditions necessary for enduring national and regional stability. Global experience provides us compelling evidence of this relationship between industrial capacity and national development. Asia offers perhaps the clearest illustration, of course I've mentioned that before, through sustained investment in modern infrastructure, technological innovation, skilled human capital, and export-oriented manufacturing, the region has become the world-leading industrial hub. In 2024, Asia accounted for 57.2% of global manufacturing value added and 47.2% of global manufactured exports. Of course, in the 2025 report. This transformation has lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, expanded the middle class, strengthened state institutions, and enhanced the region's influence in the global economy. Of course, this is very obvious because most people talk about China, and China is one good example. How many millions it lifted out of poverty within a very short period. It's true value addition, manufacturing, industrialization. Without that, there's nothing you can do. Similar lessons can be drawn from Latin America and Central and Eastern Europe, where sustained investment in manufacturing, value addition, industrial modernization, and regional economic integration have improved productivity, strengthened economic resilience, and reduced dependence on primary commodity export, as the African Development Bank report in 2024. Over the next 5 years, Latin America is expected to account for nearly 70% of global economic growth. This is based on the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development 2025 report. Collectively, these experiences demonstrate that long-term prosperity and regional stability are achieved not by the abundance of natural resources alone. If it is just natural resources alone, Africa would have been number one. But by the capacity to transform those resources into competitive industries, productive employment, and sustainable economic growth. Africa presents a striking contrast to the industrial transformation witnessed in other regions. Despite accounting for nearly 19% of the world's population, possessing abundant natural resources, like it's the number one continent in terms of spread of relative abundance of resources, continent by continent, and having the world's youngest labor force, the continent remains the least industrialized region. In 2024, Africa contributed only 2% of global manufacturing value added, 3.2% of global GDP, and approximately 1.4% of global manufactured exports. That's UNIDO 2025 report. Rather than transforming its vast natural wealth into finished products, most of the continent continues to export raw materials while importing finished goods, thereby limiting domestic value addition, technological advancement, industrial competitiveness, and job creation. Industrial performance varies widely across Africa, yet even the continent's leading manufacturing economies remain below the level generally associated with sustained industrial transformation. As of 2023, only Eswatini had exceeded the 20% manufacturing value added threshold, commonly linked to industrial takeoffs. South Africa, one of Africa's largest industrial economies, recorded a manufacturing value added to GDP ratio of 12 to 13%, while Egypt and Nigeria stood at approximately 17% and 14% respectively. At the other end of the spectrum, manufacturing contributes less than 2% of Sierra Leone GDP, that's World Bank Report 2023. These figures underscore a sobering reality despite pockets of progress, industrialization across most of Africa. Means that we still have a lot to do. Africa's industrial deficit is not merely an economic concern, it's increasingly a strategic security challenge. With more than 60% of its population under the age of 25, The continent welcomes millions of young people into the labor market each year. Yet the growth of productive employment has failed to keep pace with the demographic expansion. The resulting unemployment, underemployment, and economic exclusion have created fertile grounds for violent extremism, organized crime, piracy, irregular migration, communal conflicts, and unconstitutional change of government in several parts of the continent. Even the excessive vandalism of public assets we witness in this country is because of this. I think just yesterday I watched one video clip about a young man on a road in Nigeria, maybe in FCT or somewhere, has just been tarred. And there's brick areas where they put net bridges and block it for water to pass. The young man was using big stone to continue to hit, to crack the casings so that he can remove that to go and sell. And you look at the energy this young man was using to do that, and the value of what he will sell that thing. There's a clear case of extreme poverty. Because somebody who has a little source of income will not expend that kind of energy to steal something that almost worthless compared to the investment in the energy output. But that is basically what we face. Sorry? So if we really add value to what we have through robust manufacturing processes, most of these petty crimes will also disappear. Despite these challenges, Africa stands at a defining moment in its development journey. Never before has the continent possessed such a powerful combination of demographic potential, natural resource endowment, and continental policy momentum. By 2050, 1 out of every 4 people in the world is projected to be an African. I hope we don't get there. While Nigeria is expected to become the world's 3rd most populous country, this is this report. I also pray we should not get there, because the population is insignificant. Population is insignificant. I remember some young people, some young Africans were in a program and they were discussing, and one young with them said that, look, Nigerians are fond of saying that every 4 Africans, 1 is a Nigerian, and so on. And so what does that mean to anybody? That if you enter your kitchen and you open the refrigerator, where are the products from Nigeria? So your number is not important, and it's true. I was talking about Singapore, which is about only 5 million people. But see where they have reached. So we don't really need big population. What we need is big brains that will be able to convert our natural resources to means of exchange for all of us. If equipped with the right skills and supported by a vibrant industrial base, this youthful population could become Africa's greatest competitive advantage rather than its greatest development challenge. Equally important, the policy foundation for industrial transformation are already taking shape. The African Continent Free Trade Area, the African Union Agenda 2063, and the African Union Vision 2050 provide an unprecedented framework for expanding regional markets, strengthening industrial value chains, and accelerating economic integration. According to the World Bank 2023 report, effective implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area could increase Africa's export by about 29% by the year 2035, boost intra-African trade by more than 80%, and lift approximately 30 million people out of extreme poverty. Because if you look at globally, the intra-African trade is the least globally. Every other country, every other continent, they do better. But trade within Africa is the least. And of course, it's obvious. because we are not manufacturing. Will you export cow from Nigeria to Uganda when the Ugandans rear cow, Nigerians rear cow? So it depends on primary commodities, and which is the same across. So what are you trading? Besides the fact that infrastructure is an impediment. But because we are not manufacturing. By the time we start manufacturing, the economy of scale will come up, and some regions will produce certain things the other regions will not produce. And then, of course, we can exchange. So inter-African trade will increase. However, these gains will not be realized through trade agreements alone. They will depend on Africa's ability to build competitive industries and innovate, add value, create productive ecosystems that our young people can exploit. The challenge before Africa, therefore, is not whether the continent has the resources or the potential to industrialize. Rather, the real challenge lies in translating these immense advantages into productive capacity, inclusive growth, and lasting regional stability. Industrialization must therefore be viewed not merely as an economic policy option, but as a strategic imperative for strengthening national resilience, expanding economic opportunities, and securing Africa's future. It is against this backdrop that this paper examines the current state of industrial capacity in Africa, analyzes the nexus between industrialization and inclusive growth, industrialization and regional stability, as well as policy and institutional framework. Thereafter, harnessing industrial capacity for the inclusive growth and regional stability as the foundation for sustained prosperity and enduring peace across the continent has been x-rayed. Let us look at the state of industrial capacity in Africa. An African proverb reminds us that he who does not know where the rain begins to beat him cannot know where he dried his body. The wisdom of this proverb lies in the importance of understanding present realities before charting the way forward. Because that's the essence of history. If you don't know where you're coming from, you cannot know where you're going, where you will go. It is therefore necessary to understand an objective assessment of Africa's current industrial capacity by looking at the overall picture, regional patterns, and strategic opportunities in order to appreciate the progress made. What is the overall picture now? Africa's industrialization journey presents a picture of gradual progress, but unrealized potential. Although the continent is richly endowed with abundant natural resources, a youthful labor force, and a rapidly expanding consumer market, its manufacturing sector remains relatively small by global standards. Africa's share of global manufacturing declined from about 10% in the 70s to less than 2% now from the 2023s, accounting only about 1.9% of global manufacturing output. Across most African countries, manufacturing contributes between 10 and 15% of gross domestic product, well below the 20% threshold that the United Nations Industrial Development Organization considered necessary for sustained structural transformation. So, on the average, we are two below the average that is required for jumping. There are, however, encouraging signs of resilience. Africa's manufacturing value added, MVA, increased from approximately $285 billion in 2020 to $351 billion in 2025, while manufacturing output is projected to continue growing over the medium term. Nevertheless, manufacturing productivity remains relatively low, as reflected in the MVA per capita of per capita of about $227 million US, $227, which is still below the 2014 peak. Overall, the evidence suggests that while Africa's industrial base is expanding, the pace of transformation remains too slow to significantly alter the continent's position in global manufacturing. Yes, we are trying a little. Countries close to Nigeria, you can see if you go to Ghana, go to Cote d'Ivoire, at least their cocoa, they are also producing chocolates. They are no longer importing all their chocolate from Switzerland. If you go to East Africa, the Ethiopians are producing good coffee, they are producing red wine. Go to Uganda, go to Ethiopia. We are doing little value addition. Here in Nigeria too, we started early to even refine crude oil. After some time, all our refineries collapsed. Because government owned all the refineries. I was the president for 5 years, vice president for another 3 years, so I know the issues of the refineries. It was a problem to get refineries to work, maybe because of also the corruption. Sometimes contracts, we will recommend people that, as a president, sometimes you blame the president, but you have people that you rely on. And they go and bring people that don't have that capacity to do. Later on, you find yourself in a very difficult situation. So with the private sector getting involved in refining now, we no longer experience these fuel issues. Yes, the fuel may be a little more expensive, maybe because of global markets. But before, during every Christmas, people would be queuing overnight to buy fuel. I remember when I was in Port Harcourt that time in Nompa, sometimes you park your car overnight. By 2 a.m., you are going to buy fuel. But now, those things are becoming a thing of the past. I think the Honorable Minister was reminding me about Azike Refinery in Bayelsa State. That it's a small refinery, but by the time you will finish, the whole of that region would no longer suffer from anything about fuel shortage. So regional partnership of industrial development. Industrial development across Africa is far from uniform. While some regions have developed relatively diversified manufacturing ecosystem, others remain heavily dependent on the export of raw commodities with limited domestic value addition. North Africa remains the continent's foremost industrial hub, supported by relatively stronger infrastructure, deeper integration into European and global value chains, and sustained industrial policies. Countries such as Morocco and Egypt have developed competitive manufacturing capabilities in automotive assembly, aerospace, chemicals, and agro-processing. Between 2020 and 2025, the region attracted more than half of Africa's industrial investment, reinforcing its position as the continent's leading manufacturing center. North Africa is trying, and they are doing well. Southern Africa, led by South Africa, possesses one of Africa's oldest and most diversified industrial base, spanning automotive manufacturing, metals, machinery, and chemicals. However, the region has experienced a gradual loss of industrial momentum as electricity shortages, logistics constraints, and policy uncertainties continue to weaken competitiveness and limit manufacturing growth. And when you look at the story of South Africa, you get worried. South Africa, we undergraduates then, especially those big days of struggle for the majority rule in South Africa. But we are blacks, we are Africans. But immediately we took over, South Africa started sliding down. And it's true. I have been involved in the last 2 presidential elections in South Africa. I led one, I led ISA, one I led AU. And I remember when I was watching on television, and one person was interviewed who moved away from the ruling party, the African National Congress, to another party that is dominated by even whites and so on. And the person was talking publicly that Look what is happening in this country. I don't want to wake up one day and South Africa will be a failed state. That the direction we are going will one day become a failed state. That is the senior South Africans who said that publicly on television. So we Africans must think deeply. Even if you look at the continent, the North, the color of the people that is making them do better than us. Is the color of the skin a limitation to our cranial capacity to imagine and do things rightly? I don't think so. Is it our culture? There's something that's wrong with our culture that's pushing us backward. I don't think so, but it's something that young leaders like you will have to interrogate. West Africa presents a different picture, historically dependent on the export of minerals, crude oil, agric and forest produce, and the region is increasingly pursuing industrial diversification through agro-processing, manufacturing, and regional value chains. Although manufacturing remains modest as a share of GDP, recent policy reforms, private sector investment, and the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area have begun to create new opportunities for industrial expansion, particularly in Nigeria, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire. If you now move to East Africa, South Africa continues to record a bit low in level of industrialization among African major regions. Manufacturing contributes a relatively small share of regional output, and export remained dominated by agricultural commodities and other primary produce. Nonetheless, countries such as Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania have made measurable progress in textiles, leather processing, agro-processing, and light manufacturing, to the extent that the foundation for future industrial growth are gradually emerging in these countries. Taken together, these regions' variations demonstrate that Africa's industrial challenge is not one that is completely lost. Of course, I didn't mention Central Africa, but Central Africa is the least in terms of the 5 regions of Africa. In terms of industrialization, value addition, they are least, but I don't really, not really interested in comparing regions. But South Africa, south of the Sahara, how do we get to even meet Northern African level and beyond? That is what we should think about. Strategic industrial opportunities. Despite a relatively modest manufacturing base, Africa possesses significant competitive advantage that position the continent for accelerated industrial growth. Rather than being constrained by a lack of opportunities, Africa's challenge is to harness its abundant resources, youthful population, and expanding markets more strategically. 4 sectors in particular offer immense potential to drive inclusive industrial growth and transformation. The first is agro-processing. Yes, what you have is what you can start from. Agriculture remains the backbone of many African economies. Yes, the substantial population of the continent's agricultural commodities continue to be exported in raw form, only to return as higher value processed products. Expanding domestic agro-processing will reduce post-harvest losses, strengthen food security, create rural employment, and significantly increase value addition across agricultural value chains. For the past 3 years or so, every year we've been going to, I think we're going to Kigali to talk about African agriculture. And these are the things we continue to discuss. The second opportunity lies in textile and apparel. Africa's abundant cotton production, expanding labor force, and preferential access to several international markets provide a strong foundation for developing globally competitive textile and garment industries. The experiences of countries such as Egypt, Morocco, and Ethiopia demonstrate that sound policies, strategic investment, and improved infrastructure can transform this sector into a major source of employment, export, and industrial growth. A third opportunity lies in critical minerals and mineral beneficiation. Africa possesses substantial reserves of lithium, cobalt, graphite, copper, and other strategic minerals that are essential for the global energy transition. Rather than exporting these resources in raw form, the continent should prioritize local processing and manufacturing to capture significantly more value while strengthening their participation in global industrial supply chains. The fourth opportunity lies in digital and technology-driven industries. Africa's largest growing digital economy presents unprecedented opportunities to accelerate industrialization through innovation and advanced industry technologies. Investment in digital infrastructure, artificial intelligence, automation, and technology enable manufacturing to improve productivity, enhance competitiveness, and enable African industries to leapfrog traditional stages of industrial development. Collectively, these sectors demonstrate that Africa's industrial future will depend less on discovering new opportunities than on effectively harnessing the abundant opportunities that already exist. With visionary leadership and sound policies, strategic investment, and stronger regional collaboration, the continent can transform its vast endowments into sustainable prosperity, quality jobs, and enduring regional stability. Industrialization and inclusive growth. Inclusive growth depends not only on the rate of economic expansion, but also on how widely its benefits are shared. In this regard, industrialization is a powerful catalyst for expanding productive capacity, creating decent employment, and strengthening domestic enterprises. In doing so, economic opportunities are broadened, inequality is reduced, and national resilience is also reinforced. Employment creation is the most immediate and visible contribution of industrialization to inclusive growth. Every year, between 10 to 12 million young Africans enter the labor market, while only a fraction secure formal employment. Manufacturing remains one of the most effective means of absorbing this growing workforce because its impact extends well beyond the factory floor. Every industrial job generates additional opportunities across the production lines, logistics, distribution, and business services, creating livelihoods, stimulating entrepreneurship, and strengthening local economies. For countries confronted with rising youth unemployment, industrial expansion is therefore, for countries confronted with rising youth employment, industrial expansion is therefore both an economic necessity and a strategic investment in long-term stability. Equally important is the role of industrialization in strengthening domestic enterprise and broadening economic participation. Competitive industries stimulate networks of manufacturers, suppliers, technology providers, financial institutions, and business service firms that together form dynamic industrial ecosystems. These ecosystems enable small and medium-sized enterprises to participate more effectively in production, innovation, and regional value chain while encouraging technology transfers, improving productivity, and enhance competitiveness. As these linkages as these linkages deepen, the gain from economic growth are distributed more broadly across sectors, regions, and communities. Experience from across Africa demonstrates that these outcomes are achievable where industrial policies are sustained by strong institutions and strategic leadership. These are two key things that, as people talk about every day: the issue of strong institutions and the leadership of countries. And leadership is critical. The only thing is that the process of leadership recruitment is very challenging in Africa. Ethiopia's investment in industrial parks illustrates how focused public policy can accelerate labor-intensive manufacturing, attract investment, and generate large-scale employment. Relatedly, Rwanda has demonstrated that sound governance, business reforms, and targeted industrial policies can strengthen manufacturing competitiveness despite limited natural resources endowment. Leadership is critical. Somebody, my good friend Professor Lubai, I just came back from Uganda, and we were discussing some of the issues in Africa. We were talking about Rwanda. And I said, look at what Kagame is doing. Yes, people look at him from different angles, but that all the private schools in Rwanda have closed down. Almost all the private schools in Rwanda have closed down. It's not that government forced the private schools to close down, but the government invested so much in the public schools and brought the standard of the public schools even higher than that of the private schools. And of course, the public schools, you don't pay anything. And the standard is the same or a little bit better. So who will go and put a child in a private school when you are getting the same picture from the public school? And the Association of Public School Owners pleaded with government to give them resources to help upgrade their systems. And the Minister of Education said, no, public funds should be used for the public interest, not be used for private interest. So the private schools, like in Nigeria, private schools are booming. One day, probably, the problem in Nigeria, I was discussing with somebody else that what happened in Rwanda may be difficult in Nigeria because in Rwanda it's a smaller country. And the central government takes charge of everything from primary school to university. Here, based on our constitution, primary, secondary schools are in the hands of the state. And federal government, even tertiary education, everybody takes care. So it's difficult for the central government alone to say you can take care of all the primary schools and get it to that level. It is not going to be easy. I started with the Amajiri program, and I know what happens when I left, because it's based on primary and secondary education that actually in the hands of the state. So if you have good leadership, any of the African countries, and committed leadership, some of these things we are talking about we will not be talking about today. I remember when I became a vice president, and I was wondering, we talk about Asian tigers, and I was discussing with some of my friends, and I said, tell me how long does it take these Asian tigers to move from where all of us belong, the third world? And now some of them are in the first world, Singapore or near that. They came back to me after some time, and from the analysis, it took between 30 to 40 years. It didn't take a lifetime. So even in Nigeria, we are wobbling now. But immediately we become focused and committed and block leakages of public funds. It will not take, in 30 years, people will not believe that this is the same Nigeria. So Africa will still have hope. Nigeria's local content policies show how deliberate government intervention can deepen domestic participation in strategic industries and strengthen indigenous industrial capabilities. In Sierra Leone, the medium-term National Development Plan 2024 to 2030 and the Feed Saloon Initiative reflect the growing commitment to agro-industrial development, local value addition, and private sector participation as drivers of inclusive growth. While each country's pathway is shaped by its unique circumstances, they all underscore a common lesson. Inclusive growth is achieved when industrial development deliberately expands opportunities, strengthens productivity, strengthen productive capacity, and improve the quality of life of the citizens. Industrial capacity is therefore far more than an economic asset. It's a strategic national asset. Nations that invest in productive industries create employment, strengthen enterprises, and expand fiscal capacity. For Africa, harnessing industrial capacity is not merely a pathway to economic prosperity. It is a strategic imperative for inclusive growth to endanger regional stability. Of course, that is key. That is why most countries even try to establish financial institutions that will help people to grow their industries. China is dominating because most Chinese companies, even for the ordinary contracts, they go home and borrow cheap money from the government. That is the only way they can create jobs for their people. In Nigeria, we have the agric bank, we have the industrial bank, but they are very, very weak. The idea is for these banks to strengthen industrialization in the country. But how much money can you get from the Bank of Industry? Very little. So it is there in name, but does not have the capacity to stimulate the growth of industry in Nigeria. So for you to start any industry, you have to go outside this country to look for money. Industrialization and regional stability. Regional stability in the 21st century is shaped by far more than military capability alone. It increasingly depends on the resilience of national economies, the reliability of critical infrastructure, the security of supply chains, and the capacity of states to withstand internal and external shocks. Within this broader security environment, industrial capacity has emerged as a strategic asset that underpins national resilience and strengthens regional stability. Countries with diversified industrial base are generally better equipped to respond to economic disruption, public health emergencies, and natural disasters, and geographical crises without excessive dependence on external support. Industrial capacity also enhances regional stability by reducing strategic vulnerabilities that often undermine peace and security. Excessive dependence on imported food, fuel, medicine, industrial inputs, and critical technologies exposes countries to supply disruptions, price volatility, and external pressure during periods of crisis. Strengthening domestic and regional manufacturing capabilities improves the availability of essential goods, supports business continuity, and enables governments to respond more effectively to emergencies. The COVID-19 pandemic demonstrates the strategic risks associated with weak production capacity, as many countries struggle to secure essential medical supplies and equipment when global supply chains keep under severe strain. The lesson is clear. Resilient industrial systems are indispensable to resilient states and more stable regions. Beyond economic resilience, industrial development strengthens the institutional capacity of the state. A competitive industrial base supports investment in strategic infrastructure, technological capability, and skilled human capital that are essential for effective governance and national preparedness. It also provides the productive foundation upon which governments can sustain critical public services, respond to emergencies, and maintain social order during periods of uncertainty. Strong institutions and resilient economies reinforce one another, reducing the condition under which insecurity and instability are most likely to flourish. Industrial capability has equally become an important dimension of national and regional defense. Modern security increasingly depends on the capacity to produce, maintain, and sustain critical equipment, communication systems, transport platforms, engineering assets, and other dual-use technologies with both civilian and military applications. African countries such as South Africa, Egypt, and Nigeria have made important investments in indigenous defense industries, demonstrating the strategic value of developing domestic manufacturing capabilities in support of national security objectives. Strengthening defense-related industries not only enhances operational readiness, but also encourages technological innovation, skills development, and greater strategic autonomy. Well, for a country to grow, leaders must challenge themselves, just like the Minister of Defense challenged himself that he must end this. And because he has done that, I'm convinced that he will end it. I remember towards my last days in office, though I thought I was going to win the election anyway. I think one of my colleagues from one of the West African countries reached out to me and that they want us to give them this police for crowd control, tear gas. So I think I sent for the IGP or so I said, or the NSC. So can we give them? Then they told me that even the quantity we have is so small. I said, do we produce tear gas here? He said, no, we import it. I said, no, this must stop. We must produce. Well, I left, so I don't know whether they are producing now. Yes, sometimes you challenge yourself, and you can move. If human beings challenge themselves, they can move mountains. After the regional level, industrial cooperation provides a practical foundation for collective security, collaborative production networks, cross-border infrastructure, regional energy systems, and coordinated manufacturing for strategic commodities can reduce vulnerabilities that no single country can address alone. Such operations strengthen mutual confidence, encourage policy coordination, and improve Africa's collective capacity to respond to shared challenges, including pandemics, terrorism, climate-related disasters, cyber threats, and disruptions to global supply chains. In an increasingly interconnected world, regional stability depends not only on political solidarity, but also on the ability of African countries to build resilient industrial systems and support common security interests. Industrialization should therefore be reviewed not merely as an instrument of economic transformation, but as a strategic pillar of regional stability. A continent capable of producing critical goods, sustaining essential infrastructure, and strengthening its technological capabilities is better positioned to prevent crisis. Policy and institution framework. The successful harnessing of industrial capacity depends not only on the availability of natural resources, labor, and markets, but more fundamentally on the quality of public policy as well as the strength of national institutions. Industrial transformation as a long-term endeavor that requires strategic leadership policy, consistency, institutional coordination, and sustained political commitment. Experience across both developed and emerging economies demonstrates that countries achieve lasting industrial progress when government provides clear policy direction, creates an enabling business environment, and maintains the institutional discipline necessary to translate national priorities into measurable outcomes. For many African countries, therefore, the principal challenge is no longer the absence of industrial strategies, but ensuring their effective and consistent implementation. We all love most of these policies. The Minister of Defense, this former president doesn't look at us very well. I don't think he would have invited me to talk. Even if I'm the best, the minister said, no, don't bring Jonathan. So I have to thank the minister, the commandant, the management for asking me to come again, because I was here 2021, I was here 2021, and they asked me to come again. I don't think any former head of state have appeared here 2 times within such a short period of time. So, essentially, thank you. But my conclusion, like I've said, is yes, we have to industrialize, because when you industrialize, you create opportunities. When you industrialize, you convert the resources you have in the environment, including the human resources, which is the cranial capacity of the individuals, into means of exchange. The wealthiest people in the world we talk about is they use their brain to create the wealth. So these days, the brain creates more wealth than any natural resource now. So Africa must. And for that reason, we must review and recalibrate our educational systems, from the primary schools to the universities. We don't have any specialized university in Africa. It's terribly bad. We don't have any African university that is among the top 100 universities in the world. It's terribly bad. We have only one university in Africa that is among the 200 universities in the world. That is University in Cape Town, University of Cape Town. That percentage is too low. If you try to look at some of our top universities in Nigeria and where they are, it's just weak. We were better at those early days, but we are going down and down and down. We must come up with policies that will begin to migrate upward. We cannot achieve that overnight, but with a commitment by the leaders, a determination by the citizens, we can still change the story of Africa. I thank you all.
Our esteemed guest of honor, His Excellency Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, GCFR, former President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Chairman House Committee on Defense, Babajimi Benson, the Honorable Minister of State, Ambassador Sola, it's good to see you. The Chief of Defense Staff Service Chiefs, please permit me to stand on the already established protocols. Let me start by appreciating the band for playing the complete stanza of the national anthem. I've always observed that most times we always sing one stanza and then we want to continue, and I wonder why we're in a hurry. We've been opportunities, I'm sure most people here have traveled around and have seen how national anthems are being played. It's only in Nigeria I noticed that we cut our national anthem. And maybe that's one reason that we tend to be having more problems. We must learn to take time and complete, because the weddings are heavy for us as a nation. And it will remind us that we're one people that need to continue to work as one. And I want to appreciate Mr. President for reverting back to the old national anthem. Please, if you have not, sit down and read it line by line, and you really understand the inputs. What we need in this country is unity. What will continue to unite us together. So I really want to appreciate you for doing that. And I also want to appreciate our esteemed guest speaker, the former president. We know we are only used to Mama Peace, but there can't be Mama Peace if there's no Baba Peace. So we really appreciate you, sir, for taking time out to be here today. And every other person that is here, we say thank you for coming. It's indeed a great honor and privilege to be with you on the occasion of the graduation lecture of National Defense College Course 34. I congratulate the Commandant, faculty, staff of the college for sustaining the institution's well-earned reputation as Nigeria's foremost center for strategic professional military education. I also warmly congratulate the graduating participants for successfully completing this very, very rigorous program, which has prepared you for higher responsibilities in national security, governance, and strategic leadership. I wish to express my sincere appreciation to our distinguished guest lecturer, His Excellency Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, GCFR, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, for his insightful lecture on harnessing industrial capacity for inclusive growth and regional stability in Africa. Your Excellency will continue to remind us that industrial capacity is no longer merely an economic aspiration, but a strategic imperative. I remember vividly when our distinguished guest was the Vice President. I had the privilege of working to him. I was a lieutenant colonel there and a commanding officer in Bielsa. So I know for about 1.5 years, I've worked directly under him, and want to appreciate you, sir, for remaining the same person that we used to know you. We really appreciate you, sir. A resilient industrial base strengthens economic competitiveness, creates productive employment, enhances national resilience, and contributes significantly to regional peace and security. Equally important is your emphasis that Africa's abundant natural and human resources must be transformed into value-added production, technological innovation, and sustainable prosperity if the continent is to realize its full potential. I had the privilege of visiting Benin Republic just 2-3 weeks ago, and I visited their industrial complex. It is a marvel. A small country was able to do that. Now all their farmers take out all the cottons that the farmers are making, and they are producing towels, producing items for international markets. Nigeria used to be like that, and I think we need to really go back to see where we have missed it so that we can really redirect they are employing over 13,000 Beninois. All the farmers, all the cottons are coming from there. It is something worth living. I know we are doing it, and we have the higher capacity to do more. So I want to encourage us to continue to do that. I encourage our investors to continue to assist us. Your wealth of experience in governance, democratic leadership, and regional diplomacy has added immense value to this important discourse. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the lecture we are about to hear reinforces an important reality. The security and prosperity of our nations are mutually reinforcing. Lasting peace cannot be sustained without inclusive growth, just as sustainable development cannot flourish in an environment of insecurity. Building resilient institutions, investing in infrastructure, technology, and human capital, and strengthening regional cooperation remain indispensable to securing Africa's future. As African nations continue to deepen collaboration through continental initiatives such as the African Continental Free Trade Area, we must collectively pursue policies that promote industrialization, innovation, and shared prosperity. And I'm very happy seeing the flags here where we have more Africans and more countries coming to show the capacity that this college has. And I think it is something that we should be proud of. We have 54 African countries, and I'm looking forward to when all will have sent their representatives, because it is when we work together that we understand ourselves. Deep down, we are just one people. The borders are there, but if you travel around, you find out that we have so many things in common. And I think we want to encourage that, and specifically that we have participants from Burkina Faso, from Mali. We are looking forward to bringing Niger Republic back into the fold. We must, as Africans especially, say charity begins at home, continue to work together, because the insecurity affecting us is affecting everyone. Every African country has one challenge or the other. It is by working together that we can defeat these enemies of peace. And I think we're on the right path. So we want to encourage each other. To the graduating participants of Course 34, You are returning to your respective services, ministries, departments, and agencies at a time when strategic leadership is more critical than ever. And I want to buttress on this fact. The military is established to fight wars and win wars for the country. We have been fighting asymmetric warfare for 17, 18 years, still counting. We must sit down and research, why are we still here? Why are we still ongoing? We are not here to produce professors. Let me make that very clear. We are not in the military to produce professors. We are here to bring commanders that will deal with any enemy of the state. And it is very, very important that we note that, because it seems we are putting a lot of emphasis on education more than our core function of fighting wars. Our selection of commanders, our ability to pick the best that will go to the front and stand in and command men is more critical to us than classroom work. So I think it's very important, because I've had the privilege of being here and now I'm out. And I can tell you clearly that we must look at our selection process. We must look at how we produce our commanders that will go out in the field and have that confidence to move men and win wars. If we don't do that, we'll continue to have challenges. And I think it's very critical. I just felt it is important that I mention that very, very clearly. And other aspects is a lot of people are emphasizing on the gaps that we have in Nigeria, using religion, ethnicity to try and divide us. And I think that is very dangerous. Every country that wants to develop is closing down these gaps so that they think in unity. But it seems on our own, we have people that deliberately, intentionally want to continue to divide us using religion, ethnicity, politics, and whatever. They must always remember that our children are here and there's a future for Nigeria. And it's important that we must collapse all these gaps that we're projecting and make sure that we project unity in everything that we're doing. I just remember a few days ago, or still trending, I've been given a number of days to either resign or make sure that we end the war. We're ending the war and we're winning. It's unfortunate that a lot of religious leaders, cultural leaders, traditional leaders, stakeholders don't really mind what they spit out and the unintended consequences. We should never allow those ones that always preach hate to continue to have inroad in our country. And that's why in the armed forces, we're always very deliberate not to allow issues of ethnicity, religion, or whatever to divide us. And I think for Nigeria, it is more so because if you look at, we have over 250 different tribes and cultures and traditions and all these things. If we allow these individuals to continue to do this, Nigeria will be destroyed. And nobody can do that, because we are resilient people and we are determined to ensure that Nigeria thrives and Nigeria will continue to develop. Once again, I congratulate the graduating participants and commend the National Defense College for its continued contribution to national capacity building and strategic leadership. I also express our profound appreciation to our distinguished lecturer, His Excellency Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, General DCFR, for honoring our invitation and sharing his invaluable perspectives and wealth of experience with us. It's now
former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, our special guest of honor, General Christopher Gwabin Musa, Officer of the Federal Republic and Honorable Minister of Defense, the Chairman, House Committee on Defense, Honorable Babajimi Benson, Honorable Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Shola Enikolaye, the Chief of Defense Staff, General O.O. Oloyede, the Chief of the Service Chiefs and Inspector General Police represented, the Chief of Defense Intelligence, Head of Departments and Agencies of Government here present, Commandants of Tri-Service, Institution and War Colleges, Principal Staff Officers of Defense and Services Headquarters, members of Diplomatic Corps here present, President of Defense and Police Officers' Wives Association, the President and Coordinator of Other Officers' Wives Association, the Deputy Commandant and Director of Studies of the College Secretary, the Provost Center for Strategic Research and Studies, captains of industries here present, members of faculty, very senior officers serving and retired, participants of National Defense College Course 34, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure and honor that I warmly welcome you all to the graduation lecture of Course 34. On behalf of the faculty, staff, and entire college community, I sincerely appreciate your presence at this important event, which marks the intellectual climax of the 10th month of rigorous, strategic level education and professional development. The graduation lecture is a cherished tradition of the National Defense College. It provides an opportunity for our graduating participants to engage with eminent statesmen and strategic leaders of contemporary issues shaping national and regional and also global security. This year's theme, which is Harnessing Industrial Capacity for Inclusive Growth and Regional Stability in Africa, is both timely and significant. This is because across the continent, industrial capacity has emerged as a strategic enabler of economic resilience, technological advancement, defense preparedness, and sustainable development. Strong industrial systems not only promote inclusive growth, but also enhance national resilience, reduce strategic vulnerabilities, and contribute to lasting regional stability. We are therefore deeply honored to welcome our distinguished speaker and guest lecturer, His Excellency, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, Grand Commander of the Order of the Federal Republic and former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Your Excellencies, your distinguished records of public service, democratic leadership, commitment to peace building and conflict resolution, as well as your continued contribution to regional stability and democratic governance across Africa, uniquely position you to share valuable perspective on this important subject. We are profoundly grateful that you accepted our invitation despite your demanding schedule and look forward to benefiting from your wealth of experience, strategic insight, and statesmanship. To the graduating participants of Course 34, today marks another important milestone in your professional journey. Over the past 10 months, you have broadened your strategic outlook, strengthened your professional network, and enhanced your capacity for higher responsibilities. As you return to your respective organizations and countries, I encourage you to apply the knowledge acquired here with dignity, integrity, professionalism, and innovation. Continue to foster collaboration across services, agencies, and partner nations, recognizing that contemporary security challenges require integrated and whole-of-government responses. Distinguished participants, the nation has invested significantly in your development. I, therefore, urge you all to justify that investment through exemplary leadership and strategic thinking. As you listen to today's lecture, please reflect on how industrial development can serve as a catalyst for economic transformation, stronger national resilience, and enduring peace and stability across Africa. In closing, permit me to once again warmly welcome our distinguished guest lecturer, His Excellency, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, Grand Commander of the Order of the Federal Republic, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Honorable Minister of Defense, Chief of Defense Staff, the service chiefs, heads of security and intelligence agencies, members of diplomatic corps, distinguished invited guests, our faculty and staff, and the graduating participants of Course 34. I thank you all for your presence and wish everyone a rewarding and intellectually stimulating lecture. Onward together.